Ooh, suddenly soundtracks are here to provide you. Suddenly soundtracks will show you care. Oh, be more the soundtrack inside you with sweet understanding. Oh, with sweet understanding. With sweet understanding. Soundtracks are your friend. Hey guys, welcome to Suddenly Soundtracks, the show where we judge a movie solely based on the soundtrack that it provides. If you are not familiar with Suddenly Soundtracks, this is how it works. First, we go through a song track by track and judge it and give it a rating, either a rockin', a download the track, a one-time listen, or a skip it. Each rating is exactly self-explanatory, his and their. It's a pretty simple show. We just go in order and we just judge the movie by the music, not the film itself. I am with two splendid guests. First is Kristen Smith. Hey, Kristen, how are you doing today?
Great.
What is your connection to Singing in the Rain?
It's a movie that I've watched.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I'm just joking. No, so this is one of my mom's favorite movies. And as someone who enjoys watching movies with their parents and grew up with their parents kind of, giving that down and passing that down. It was a movie that I watched all through childhood. And I remember seeing it quite a lot. And I took my mom, I think for Mother's Day, to see it in like this old retro theater in Detroit. Like a decade ago. It's really sad. I mean, I don't, how has this happened to me? But yeah, I mean, it has a lot of emotional connection just because it is something that I have watched with my mom a lot and with my sister, and we have this very deep bond with it. So it's something that I absolutely adore wholeheartedly, and I'm happy that this episode is finally happening after like 2 years.
After 2 years, indeed. We actually had this episode set up to do like 2 years ago before the show went on hiatus because of my availability and such. But we are joined for the first time. I've been trying to get him on for a long time. Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. How you doing, Rob? What is your connection to Singing in the Rain?
Well, I'll tell you. Here was a movie that I actually owned on Laserdisc, but I never watched. It was one of these movies that I felt like as a film fan, I needed to own it, but my great secret was I'd never watched it. So when I finally moved to California from Seattle and I went to USC to go to film school, there's Cinema 190, which is like an introduction to film course. And the first movie that was up on Cinema 190 was Singing in the Rain. And at USC, they showed a print. They screened a print in the 500-seat Norris Theater. So the first time I ever saw this movie, and keep in mind, it was in my collection, which I'd never watched. I really didn't know much about this other than Clockwork Orange. You know, the Singing in the Rain bit in Clockwork Orange was one of my favorite movies, but I didn't have any context. So that first day, I sat in the theater, and I didn't know it was about the beginning of the sound era and the transition of making movies from the silent era to so that immediately endeared itself to me immediately. I had no idea, but this movie was beyond delightful. I mean, when I watch this film, I'm like, this is amazing. I loved this movie. It's so good. And Donald O'Connor and it's so good. And the acting, the music, and the songs, you cannot see this movie and not come away with it without singing something, and not just Singing in the Rain. Every song is catchy, and I love this film.
Yeah, it feels like a filmed stage play. That's how I kind of figure it out. And I do like the aspect about the film being basically about the transition from the silent era to the talkie era, because honestly, I feel like that portion of history isn't necessarily talked about that much.
Right.
Nope.
What's the matter with my voice?
Oh my God, yes.
I think that's where the Harley Quinn voice kind of originated.
I would not doubt it.
Not me neither.
All right, guys, we're going to go straight into the first track, which is Fit as a Fiddle. Rob, what is the context of Fit as a Fiddle in the film, and what are your thoughts on the song itself?
Well, it's kind of it shows the relationship between our two main characters, really, and how it shows them working together it gives a background context as to who they are and how their friendship works. I guess you'd say that, right?
Yeah, about the duality of both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And how just one could start one sentence and the other could finish the sentence. And it's just a lot of fun. And it's all about their friendship, really.
The music is kind of like very ragtimey.
Very much so.
Very much so from that.
They're even dressed ragtimey.
They are, with the stripes and all that.
Yeah.
Krista, what are your thoughts on Fit as a Fiddle?
Yeah, so I agree with Rob. This is like just a really great introduction to the characters of Don and oh my gosh, why can't I remember his name in the movie? But you know, you
Cosmo.
get Cosmo. It's like the easiest name to remember in a movie because his name is Cosmo. It's just a great introduction to their friendship, but also the story of this movie that we're about to be in, because it's them in their relation to the film industry, right? You're seeing the film industry kind of grow through them to the point where talkies start being introduced. So you get this great introduction to not only the friendship, but also the industry. And I love that as the soundtrack kind of progresses, like with this song, it kind of is the only one that does it. And then it kind of moves out of it. It has that feeling of almost like the singing is through a tin can, which is such like an old timey feel. Like if you're listening to music from the 30s, they all kind of have that like, you know, like that's like just such a timing thing, you know? Yeah, thank you. You know, it's such a timely thing, and it's such a smart thing to do. And specifically this song, because that's what you would expect to hear at that point. And then as they exit out of the song and go into the real world, everything kind of becomes more operatic and lovely and full. And, you know, you lose the tin can, as it were. So I think the song is a fun introduction. It does lose a lot of meaning when you take away the visual aspect of it. However, that's my only note is that I have a fun time toe tapping to this, listening to it. But without the visuals, it loses so much of what it actually means.
I'd actually argue, though, that the sound and the quality of the song actually brings you to the 1920s. So at its purpose in the soundtrack kind of sort of dignifies where this movie, this place is taking place. So you kind of need that world building song. It's not dissimilar to every opening number that world builds a song, like in Little Shop of Horrors or in Beauty and the Beast with Belle. It's sort of that kind of aspect, that it's just introducing you to the world, but through, instead of the actual song itself, the music and the kind of style that it is. I would give it a download. It's not terrible in the slightest. I wouldn't say that I would go back to it on multiple occasions, but it's not a one-time listen, bar none. Chris,
you know what, Chris,
you give it?
I gotta say, that's a really interesting, very astute observation. I mean, I've never, the idea that song is world building, and it really is setting the time and place. It's pre-transition. It sets up where we're at before the main, I don't know, you can't call it a MacGuffin, but the whole idea of going from the silent world to the sound world. And even though we forget that the silent world, even though movies were silent, it was still full of music.
Yeah.
You know, the world was still, and it's interesting the way you put it. You've now just recontextualized my whole idea of world building as far as movies are concerned. Wow.
It does.
I like that idea.
Yeah. What do you give it, Rob?
I'd give it a download. I mean, I guess so. It doesn't rock my world because, like you said, it's world building. It's more contextual than anything else. But I think it's a catchy tune.
It is. It's very catchy.
Yeah,
it's an earworm. Yeah,
it is an earworm. Earworm.
Yeah. Earworm. Yeah. Kristen, what do you give it?
Yeah, I agree. Download it. I still really love it, and I agree with the timeliness aspect of it in terms of the musicality matching with the decade it's supposed to be set in being really important. I just think the visuals add so much to it, which is kind of the only drawback. So download it. I still like listening to it. It's just not one that I will go and purposely look for if I'm not listening to the whole soundtrack all at once,
I think we're all on the same page for that one. Next is we're introduced to Debbie Reynolds' character with her crew of dancers. All I Do is Dream of You.
So this song is when, Gene Kelly's character goes to a movie industry party, right? This is the party where they unveil the talkie to all these movie industry people. And it's a big celebration, I think, to like the closing of a movie production. And, that there are all these people, they're dancing, they're having fun. And then out comes a cake. And then out pops Debbie Reynolds, and then you get this song. And Gene and Debbie Reynolds had already met at this point, and it was a big,
it was really awkward when he puts his.
It's a big snafu, and then all of a sudden she's popping out of a cake, and we get this great song. And it's one of the, I feel like, most underlooked songs of the soundtrack, because I think everyone kind of knows like the Make 'em Laughs, and everyone knows the Singing in the Rains and the Good Mornings because they're part of pop culture at this point. But this song I love. I absolutely adore it, and I feel like people don't give it as much credit as it probably is due, because it is such a fun performance, and Debbie gives so much like bright energy to it, even though in the actual film she's super uncomfortable at the fact that she's performing this to Gene Kelly, who she just had this big argument with, and she basically just accused him of being like a sex offender. It's a great joke, but it's definitely something that people don't necessarily understand unless they watch the movie. And if you're not watching the movie, you're not listening to this song, which is a huge disappointment to me. It's so up tempo. It's got these great vocals, a lively performance that you can like visualize in your head without actually even seeing the movie. So yeah, I love this song, and it literally has the potential to get stuck in your head forever.
Yeah, it has a very similar chord progression and style to actually Fit as a Fiddle. I feel like you can basically sing Fit as a Fiddle over this song, and you wouldn't really miss too many beats. Rob, what are your thoughts on All I Do Is Dream of You?
Well, what I love about this song is they've met before, and now Dawn is seeing Kathy, and she's embarrassed that she's like not up to snuff, and yet she wants to impress him, but she did not expect, as she pops out of the cake, to see Dawn, there, and he gets to like hold it over her, and it's just kind of this delightful scene. And then of course she's still the lead singer of this, so she has to do her job, which is still perform. And I think it's from a story standpoint, I know we're talking about whether this song can exist outside the movie, but like it is so infectious, and it is something that you can't not. This song stays with you for a long time, and it works for. There have been times in my life where this song just pops into my head randomly for whatever reason, because it's so much fun, and buoyant, and you can't not. To me, this is like a signature song of Singing in the Rain, because it exemplifies, even though they've met, but when I think meet cute, anybody meeting cute, it's kind of this scene, and so this song goes along with that, I guess. So I love this song.
Yeah, I would also like to note that in the actual soundtrack version, this isn't a major key, this is uplifting. There is a minor key reprise that Gene actually sings himself, which I think the footage of that was lost or something. Rob, do you want to go off of what the reprise is and what your thoughts on the reprise and what you think happened to the footage?
Well, there's when they're making musicals, there's always in terms of length, and when you're making a film, musical numbers, you can't really cut, especially the way musicals were made back then. You can't like have half a song, because usually each song is a scene that has a beginning and a middle and an end. So if you cut off a song in the middle, it doesn't really work. So I'll bet it was cut for time.
Yeah,
You know, that they had to remove the whole scene from the movie to make it work. I mean, that's basically what I would say.
Yeah, and it's essentially a reflection of what she's singing, and it's a literal reprise of the actual thing, but Gene is actually singing it in a minor key.
Right.
Kristen, if you listen to the reprise, what are your thoughts on the reprise of it?
It's a great callback, and it's one of those things where you get the emotion of the character through the song because it changes keys, so it's more meaningful. It's more like mental. You know, he's thinking about it, he's feeling it because of the key change, and that's really kind of the crux here, is that we would have got more of the development of this romance, at least on Gene Kelly's side through this song. But at the same time, like, you kind of get that natural progression through the movie anyway. So do you really need it? No. Is it a really nice, mirror to the two different versions of the song being back to back? I think it's a great thing to have on the soundtrack. But I don't know that it's necessary for the movie.
You get that transition on the soundtrack, which you kind of need the context of. In the film, it's already given the context through dialogue and scenes, but with that song in its place on the soundtrack, it fits a bigger and better purpose. Before I turn it to Rob, Kristen, I have two questions. What would you give this song? And B, do you think the reprise either would have amplified it, or do you think, and what would you give the reprise?
Okay, so I have in my notes download, but like now that I'm like talking about it, I'm gonna give it a rocking because I do really enjoy it. Like I said, it's such an underrated song in general, and so I will not underrate it. Rocking. Do I think the reprise would help it or hurt it? I don't think it would do either. I think that it adds meaning to the story. It doesn't actually make the original song better or worse. What would I rate the reprise? Probably a download it. Like, it's a great emotional song, but the original is like so just like upbeat. Oh, it's so good.
Rob, I'm gonna give you those two same questions.
Well, I'm gonna say this might be a little sacrilegious, but I would give this a download. Both versions a download. Only because, to be honest, I think listening to this song on its own can frankly get a little annoying. Is that fair to say? Even though I agree with everything you said, I totally agree with that. But it to me, this song is kind of a gimmicky song because it is a meet cute. It's a great song, but there's a gimmickiness to it that I've always felt, even the way it's sung, that I love it in the context of the movie, but maybe outside of the movie, it doesn't work as well for me. So so I think for both, and that's I hate Gene's version of it is a little better, but I think without the original version, it doesn't really. I would say download each one of them.
Yeah, but my opinion is actually I'm on kind of the same wavelength as Rob a little bit, is that it is kind of gimmicky is a good way to describe it. It's very situational. The music it's very situational for the film itself. By itself, I actually feel like in the movie it kind of is a detriment. It's kind of like half of a song because I feel like the reprise kind of completes it, in my opinion, even in the movie itself.
Yes.
So for me, it's actually going to be the first part. I actually prefer the reprise. Reprise is a download. The first part is a one-time listen, not because it's a bad song, but I feel like just because I feel like in the film itself it serves so much of a purpose that by itself it's a little too not my cup of tea, personally speaking. But but I do like the reprise a lot. I think the reprise is a little bit better of a song. But we're going to move on though to track number 3, which is "Make 'Em Laugh."
And then you get a great big custard pie in the face. Make 'em laugh.
Well, this song, Donald O'Connor it's his number.
Yep.
He's basically, this song is an anthem. I mean, this song it can be sung at any time. I'll tell you right away. I'll tell you flat out. this song is one of the most rockin' songs on this soundtrack. I love this song. This song is a life philosophy.
Mhm.
And if there's anything that sums up this movie, it's about the friendship of two men. It's about what they want to do and what their mission in life is, not just for an audience, but with one another, you know, and it is a tour de force of dance and humor, and I can't get enough of this song. And it's one of my favorite songs in this whole movie, and it's a song that I find just popping into my head. Since I've seen this one when I was in college, it pops into my mind all the time, and
Mhm.
and I think this almost more than any other song defines what this movie is all about.
Yeah, it's full of energy. Like the energy palpulates throughout the entire song, and even by itself, the song just screams so much energy that it could easily be on the radio. It's
Oh,
yeah, yeah. And just what's his name?
Donald O'Connor.
O'Connor.
Donald O'Connor. He's phenomenal. He
Oh,
just his physicality, the way that he can just walk on like pianos is insane.
Up
Yeah,
walls.
up walls.
yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's phenomenal. And even taking the visual aspects away from that, the song just screams energy and palpable energy, something the soundtrack needed. Kristen, go for it.
Yeah. This is one of the most iconic movie musical songs of all time. One of the most iconic musical songs of all time. It is actually one of the only songs that was actually written for this movie, because a lot of these other songs were reprised. MGM was like, we would like to make this movie, but we would like to reprise songs from older musicals. It's kind of like a poignant thing to use previous songs in a movie about how they made the first musical, you know?
It's a jukebox musical, the first
Yeah.
jukebox musical, essentially.
But as they were, you know, writing everything out, they realized that they did not have a song for Donald O'Connor. And how the hell do you make this movie without a song for Donald
Yeah.
O'Connor? So they made this song for him, and it has some veins to some other old movie musical songs, but it's originally for him. And it is one of the most perfect songs ever made. And a lot of that's due to the performance of Donald O'Connor and just how fantastic he is and how much energy he gets, not even in the visual performance, because we can talk about that for an hour, but in the vocal performance of it. Like, you feel tired after listening to this song in like the best possible way.
Yeah.
Like, it is like running a marathon with this song. And with the performance as a whole, I mean, a stunning visual performance. The choreography is some of the hardest ever done still to this day. He put himself in the hospital because he tired himself out so much doing this routine for the movie. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
crap.
So it literally exhausted him so much that he had to go to the hospital. So, I mean, we could talk all day about this. It's easily a rockin' for me, 100%. And just the level of, you know, I mean, man, your heart just feels great after listening to this song. But how true it's like a double-sided thing here where like it's such a fun song, but then there's also kind of like a darker tone to it where it's like, no matter what you're doing, you got to make them laugh. Like, and that's really poignant given that Donald O'Connor put himself in the hospital doing this piece because at the end of the day, the show must go on. Correct. So it's a super fun song, but then there's also kind of that undertone to it of like, if you're just feeling really crappy, you still got to do your job and make them laugh, you know? So it's a great story song. It's a great song, and I love Donald O'Connor, and his performance here is one of the best of all time.
It's easily a rockin', and also I'm gonna backpedal off of that is just because like it's playing to the audience. You have to when you're in the silent area, you got to play to the audience, and you got to be that obnoxious ham, or you just don't translate onto film as well as you would like.
Right.
Not like today, where the camera can be like right up on your nose without actually being there.
And it perfectly encapsulates that in this song, and it's easily a rockin' for me. We're gonna move on though to track number 4, which is "You Were Meant for Me."
Yeah, so this song is at a point where, you know, Debbie is finally starting to, I'm using the actors' names because I think that they deserve to have their names said so many times.
That's fine.
Yeah, so Debbie Reynolds is finally starting to kind of like realize that she was wrong about Gene Kelly's character this whole time. And that, you know, she actually does have feelings for him, because before she had like this little crush because he was like the Leo DiCaprio of that era, right? Every little, you know, everyone had a crush on Leo, and everyone had a crush on Donald, whatever, you know, his last name is in the movie, because I haven't seen this movie recently enough to remember last names. So yeah, it's she's starting to realize her feelings. Gene Kelly takes her to the soundstage where he sets the scene of this really romantic portrayal, and you know, he sings this really lovely ballad to her in this incredible backdrop that was like hand painted with all this lighting and a fan, and they dance, and it's kind of really symbolic of not just their romance, but also like on film romance, and you kind of get the fakeness of it by seeing the duality of them setting the scene, but then the scene kind of breaking, where the camera will zoom out and you see all of like the settings and like the wires and the cranes, and or they'll be dancing and they kind of dance in the shadows, so you can't actually see their faces or their bodies anymore, like they're hiding from the cameras because their romance is real. So like it's a really cool setup for the visuals of the scene, because you get the setup of how fake, you know, cinematic romance is, but then also how real their romance is. The song itself it's a really great ballad. When I was younger, this is a song that I would 100% skip every single time I watched this movie, because apparently I had no class. I don't know what that says about me as a child, but you know, this is one of those songs, and this happens more than once in this soundtrack, where just hearing Gene Kelly's voice, you can just like see how charming he is. Like if I was someone who had never seen Gene Kelly and I heard this song, I'd be like, man, this is the most charming person who has ever lived. And I would be right, pretty much, because this song just exudes charm. It exudes just like passion, and not like the red passion, but like the, you know, soft, sultry passion. And it's just a really nice song to kind of break pace with the high energy we've had so far in the musical. And especially since they got rid of the only other low energy song so far in the musical, this is really needed to keep the pacing different, and allow for some room to breathe after, especially Make 'Em Laugh. So I really like this. It's a song for me that I need the visual aspect because of how symbolic it is. But I still love hearing it because it does have a lot of emotion behind it.
Yeah, that you hit the nail on the head. Is that it kind of like, to me, it really just sounds like. Sadly, I hate to say this because Gene's voice is great. It just sounds very generic. I don't by itself. It just sounds very generic. Rob, do you have any opinions on You Were Meant for Me?
Yeah, you know, well, I've always liked the number in the film because it's showing the magic of movie making. You're on a sound stage. It's beautifully shot, this whole sequence, the use of light and shadow, and the use of we know what's real and what's fake. And this is the number where they're falling in love. I mean, this is solidifying the fact that these two people really do love one another, but also with the backdrop of Hollywood behind it. And it's really interesting to me because it juxtaposes what's really going on with the two of them is very real, yet everything else is fake, you know, and the whole movie is about the sort of illusory nature of Hollywood, and yet within all of this, it's all about what is real and what's not real, especially when it comes to emotions. But whether it's people's voices, which aren't or are, and yet you're watching a very real emotional connection happen with these two people in the midst of Tinseltown and the midst of all this making up stuff, you know, make believe. But I agree with you, Chris, in that the song, it's a little generic. It could almost be in any movie. And as much as I think with the visuals, it becomes sort of this indelible scene, but without the visuals, it's like, what movie is this from?
Yeah.
Like if you hadn't seen the film, it's not like Maria in West Side Story or something like that. You know, it's
I would argue that this is one of the only songs on the soundtrack where it feels like it was made for another movie. And most of these songs were made for other movies, but this is like the only one where it's like, yeah, this feels like it was made for something else.
Yeah, it feels like a song from South Pacific. It sounds like Some Enchanted Evening or something. It has that same kind of like quality to it, but Some Enchanted Evening at least has a little bit more memorable kind of chord progression. This just feels like it's something you would find on like audio blocks, and you would just put it in. Sadly, I would give it a skip it. It has nothing to do with the actual song itself. Personally speaking, I just feel like this is the epitome of something that works in film but does not work on the soundtrack. That does not mean it's a bad song, but it just means that I wouldn't go back to it. Kristen, what would you give it?
I give it a Small Child Me is a skip it. I'll give it a one-time listen on the soundtrack. If you're skipping this in the movie, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
Don't skip
very,
don't skip it in the movie. It's an incredibly well-made scene. It's a huge part of this movie you need to watch for the filmmaking of it and the story of it. So don't skip it in the movie, but like maybe in the soundtrack. You're
absolutely right about that. 100%.
Yeah. Rob.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm gonna have to skip it as well, because this is not something that I would be listening to as I'm driving down the Ventura Highway in the summertime. You know, I wouldn't do it.
I could see you listening to this stuck in traffic. Someone just rolls up next to you and they're like, is that Robert Meyer Burnett listening to You Were Meant for Me?
Yeah.
Totally.
Busted.
110%. We're going to move on to the next track, though, which is Moses.
Okay, so this whole thing, once they realize they're making a talkie, and they also realize that Lena Lamont can't talk for shit, they have to go to vocal training coaches, which is really still in practice today. You have to be able to talk within a certain regional accent or whatever, and they want to make sure that you're saying everything correctly. So everyone goes to vocal coaches nowadays. It's not unfamiliar for anyone in the industry.
Look at the King's Speech.
But back then, when there were no talkies, it was a new thing. And so you have, Lena going, and it's a really funny scene with her. You should go watch it, even if you don't watch the whole movie. At least like the scene with her and her vocal coach is one of the funniest things of all time for me. So funny. But then you get this great song with Gene and Don as he goes to his vocal coach, and his coach is giving him all of these tongue twisters and, trying to find really tricky ones. And he gets so excited. And like this vocal coach is super giddy about like finding like the weirdest tongue twisters. Oh, try this one, snifters, And so then you get this song where Gene and Don are just basically playing around with this guy, this like kind of nerdy guy. And you get this wonderful chemistry between the two actors. And you feel the camaraderie here, to me, more than you felt in the opening song, even though that opening song was supposed to be the setup of their friendship. To me, this is like the crux of their friendship, that they are so in tune that they can just do this whole routine and base it off of one tongue twister, and the chemistry is fantastic. They work off each other so well in both the dancing and the singing. This is one of my favorite dance numbers in a musical. It's just so lively. And the fact that they included the tap dancing in the soundtrack adds so much to me, because that rhythm is so like cool to hear. It's like when you hear a song and they include like typewriting in it or something. Like, it's just a cool ambient sound that I absolutely love, that it's still in the song on the soundtrack. So I love this song. It's an amazing vibe. It's tons of fun.
The fact that they added the tap dancing means that you can take the dancing into account. It's literally, it's the second original song made for this movie. Yeah, literally, since they added the tap dancing element to the track, you can actually judge the track with the dancing element included.
Which is awesome. It's something
that
fantastic.
It's something that it's rarely done. You never hear the tap dancing in soundtracks. They usually just let it be the score, and you have to envision what's happening underneath it. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't translate that well to the soundtrack. Rob, what are your thoughts on Moses?
Well, I have to agree. I love this song because another thing that this song is basically saying is that the corporate minders of the studio, like we're now transitioning into the sound era, and they're telling these two performers that don't need anyone to tell them how to speak or how to sing or how to do anything. This is sort of them being defiant against the man, and the man is the studio, and the man is, you know, this diction coach who's come in. He's like very stuffy and very proper, and I'm going to teach you how to. These guys don't need anything this guy is selling. They don't need it. They're consummate performers, yet they have to put up with this. Well, okay, the studio's going to tell you what to do, and they're like, yeah, we got this, but they don't have it. And in order to make it bearable, they take it back from this diction coach and make it their own. And they're like, bruh, we don't need you here. All right. But we'll put up with you, and we'll endure what we have to, because that's what the studio wants. And we'll be good players, but they turn it into the most enjoyable thing that they can. They make it something that is their own, and they're having a really good time at his expense, at the studio's expense. There is an element of anarchy in this song that I really love. And again, like Christian was saying, it completely solidifies the fact that their friendship, it's their friendship that's going to make the talking era in Hollywood work, because these guys are such consummate professionals. They don't need diction coaches to come in and tell them how to be. And it's just this buoyant, awesome song. And I love this song to death. Yeah, and this is the kind of song that you sing in the shower.
Exactly. What would you give it, Rob?
Oh, I would. It's rocking.
It's a rocking for me too. Kristen, are you different?
No
way.
This is the easiest rockin' I've given in a long time. It's fantastic. So
easy sauce. We're gonna get right into Good Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. We've talked the whole night through.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Well, this is the song when Cosmo, Dawn, and Kathy Selden basically join forces. You know, this is the song where there's conspiracies that are being built. Their conspiracy. They've got to figure out how to get rid of Lena Lamont, and this is the song that solidifies the bond that these three characters have, and it shows that Kathy Selden can hold her own with Dawn and with Cosmo, and it shows how they can all work together, and also it's a celebration of this newfound friendship, and that the three of them together are going to take on this the whole era that's coming, that's rolling down on them. They're going to win. I mean, yeah, of course they're going to be thrown through a few loops on the way, but this song is such. First of all, the idea of Good Morning obviously is a great sentiment, but the morning they're talking about is the entire new day that's dawning over Hollywood, and it's the new day that's dawning over the fact that they're going to get out there together, and they're going to solve their problems because they're that much in tune. And also, it's just what a great song. It is. I mean, it's such a great song, and the way they all play off one another. It's just great. I love it.
Yeah, and it essentially came to be because of that failed test screening where they decided, let's just make this movie a musical. And they said that, and they say that 6 weeks is enough time. I guess it's enough time to make a film. Kristen, what are your thoughts on Good Morning?
Yeah, 6 weeks is totally enough time to make a movie musical. I don't see anything wrong with that. Yeah, this is a great song. This is a fantastic song. It's also the only song where we get the three leads all together. And you can tell that they are just having like the time of their lives in this, because it's just such a fun performance, and they put so much into it. The joy that they have is like exuberant, right? And the vocal performances here are so like uplifting, and everything about, Debbie Reynolds' voice, which is very lyric anyway. just really cuts through all of the male vocals. And it's something that I really appreciate here, because a lot of the time the male vocal kind of overpowers some of the female vocals in these kind of musicals. You get that a lot with like the duets between her and Gene Kelly, where they tend to focus on Gene's voice more than her voice. But in this song, it's literally all about Debbie Reynolds' voice and how it cuts through this like male voice here. And I love it 100%. But yeah, it's so much fun. The performance of it is just a joy. And man, I like, this is like the song on the soundtrack I sing all the time.
What would you give it?
All the time. It's a rockin'. Easy. Another easy rockin' here.
Yeah. This is simple. This is catchy. This is an earworm. It's solid on many aspects. I wouldn't consider it one of the best on the soundtrack, so I'm going to give it a solid download, but it's a high download. Also, this is technically the first song where they all sing together, but apparently, at the start there was the whole first version of Singing in the Rain where they sing together. I think they probably put that in post or something to make sure that they give them another song. I find it really weird that this is like the only song that's the trio. It's really, really odd. Rob, where do you give it?
I love this song.
Yeah,
I've got it. When I think Singing in the Rain, I think this song is right up there. So I would give this a rockin'.
Yeah, it's fun. It's phenomenal. Speaking of Singing in the Rain, the title track, Rob, I'm going to give you the honors.
Singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again.
Gene Kelly is Life is Good. And here is a man who's possessed by love, who's possessed by the idea that the future is bright. They've got everything sorted. And this is a man who has, at this point, for a moment at least, not a care in the world. And it's a downpour when anybody else might be sad, anybody else might be depressed, and oh my God, it's raining cats and dogs. Not this man. He's possessed by so much joy that he jumps in the puddles. He uses his umbrella. It's no longer he doesn't need to be protected from the rain. It doesn't matter how wet he gets, and he just bursts into song. And it is there's no wonder this movie is called Singing in the Rain, because it's really about that. Even at this moment, you still have such joy, and it's seldom have you ever seen a moment anywhere where one man is so jubilant about his life. And it's a great image in the film, but the song and the performance is so great. I mean, I could listen to this song forever. I love this song, the way it's delivered. I mean, it's not over the top. You know, it's one man. The orchestration, I think, is great. Yep. And it's just it's very smooth, and it just makes you feel good hearing this song. And I love it.
Yeah, I love the juxtaposition, because it is very cliche, very, very cliche to be like, okay, it's raining outside, I'm depressed, I'm sad, rainy days and Mondays always get me down. But I love the juxtaposition that he's so optimistic during this song. It's raining. He's singing in the rain. It's the optimism that really just grabs you. And I think that's what a good song should do, is just to recede expectations, so to speak.
Oh,
yeah, it's phenomenal. Kristen, go for it.
Yeah. I agree with everything everyone else has said up to this point. Yeah. I just love that this song is really the epitome of someone who's so over the moon that like nothing can get them down, right? Like he is just so head over heels, happy, in love, and just excited for the future, that he's running through the rain, dancing in puddles. And I mean, this song is just like everything to movie musicals. I mean, like the iconic nature of the imagery of this, where like people do the pose, right? If they're out and there's a street light, they do the pose, like they hang on to it and they lean. And I mean, it's just iconic in pop culture. It's iconic in musical culture. And I think that there is very few musical sequences that utilize their stars' abilities to the best extent like this one does, because you get the best of Gene Kelly singing, you get the best of Gene Kelly's like really perfectionist dancing, and like he is like the epitome of perfectionist. Like they did so many takes for this dance number because he wanted everything to be absolutely perfect here, and it is. Everything about the song is just wonderful. And it, like you said, had a real danger of being like a really sappy, generic song. But I think the visuals of it, but then also Gene Kelly's performance really take it to that just like stratic, atmospheric kind of level here, because the song is charm itself. Yep. I adore this song.
What do you give it?
A rockin'.
Rob?
Oh.
You have to ask.
Rockin'.
It's the title track of the damn song.
So good.
It's so good. And the choreography is phenomenal, even though it's just one guy. You have to note that it's wet. That's actual rain that they're putting on the stage.
Oh, yeah.
Running around. Yeah. So he could have like slipped, fell. That would have been bad. But we're gonna move on to Would You. All right. Would you? This is essentially the overdub song, the ADR song. The song that the actress sings while Debbie Reynolds sings.
This song is yeah, when they're making this movie, right? This is the song that comes in to transition all of Lena's scenes into a musical. Yeah. And you get who is supposed to be Debbie Reynolds singing this song in a surprise overdub of an overdub. You get Betty Noyles singing it. And she has the most beautiful, sultry alto voice I have ever heard. I love her voice. And it's really interesting because you can still hear Debbie Reynolds in the voice. So you still kind of believe, oh, this could be Debbie Reynolds. Yeah. Like until I knew it was an overdub, I thought it was Debbie Reynolds. Because they did a really great job of keeping the voices similar. But the sultry kind of darker tones, the deeper tones of her voice are so soothing and so like tasty, which is a weird thing, but people say that when they listen to music sometimes. Like it's just like, it makes my soul feel good listening to this vocal performance of the song. It's not the best song outside of the movie, because I think it means more to the movie than it means to the soundtrack. Because as you see it in the movie, you're seeing this transition from them filming the scenes, them editing the scenes, and then them showing the scenes in a screening. And so you get a lot more emotion tied to the song. You get more purpose to the song. And actually, like watching this song, I actually get emotional at the end of it. Just listening to it, I think it's a lovely performance. And I think the voice and the vocal technique is gorgeous, but the emotion of it doesn't carry through to me as much as it does on screen. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great song, but at the same time, it's not the best one on the soundtrack. And it's also not Debbie Reynolds, so like, take it as you will. It's a little confusing if you have no idea what the movie is, and then all of a sudden you're like, who's Betty Noyles?
I feel like this kind of suffers essentially from the last song. That it just kind of feels a little generic. Rob, what are your thoughts on Would You?
Well, I pretty much agree with Kristen. I mean, this film is all plot development. Yeah. I mean, it's actually serving to show how now that we're transitioning into the world of sound, how can one actor, I mean, it's ironic that it's showing how one actress can dub another actress's voice, where in the song itself, one actress dubs another actress's, or one singer dubs. So there's an irony. There's an irony, a meta irony to this whole number. And while I think that the song works really well in the context of the movie,
it does.
I don't think it works as well outside the film. And it's not a song that I would necessarily come back to. I think it works best while you're watching the movie. It's a good song. I mean, it's a fine song, but again, it's not something that I would give it a one-time listen. I think outside on the soundtrack, it'd be something I would skip. But in the film, it's essential. Like you have to, and also in this, another thing about this song is it represents, you're watching Gene Kelly look at Debbie Reynolds, but the character of Dawn watching Kathy Selden perform, and he's sitting down watching her, and the love for her just exudes, just comes off of him, and to see that all of the hopes and all of his character was right about Kathy Selden. His character was like, he was correct. I mean, she can hold her own. He's watching her perform and pull this off. They are going to make this work. And so there's a professional respect and a mutual admiration and a love that you see between these characters. And it's great. It's great in the film. But again, as a song, not my favorite.
Context. Yeah. You lose the context.
Yeah.
For me, I'm with Rob. It is a one-time listen. Again, I kind of prefer the song though to what's the last song that song called you were meant to be. I kind of prefer this to that because it feels less generic, but at the same time it doesn't there's better fish to fry. But we're going to go on to the next song, the penultimate song. Oh, you did not read it. You know what? This is great. This is live.
It's not live. That's
it
good
is
for
live.
you.
It isn't live. Yeah. Kristen, what do you give it?
Yeah, I'll give it a one-time listen because I love the vocal technique, but you do miss out on Lena Lamont's vocals in the soundtrack. They don't include it. And who doesn't want to hear, would you? So that's, yeah, just listen to it one time. You get the great vocal and then watch the movie.
Yeah, the context is what is necessary.
Absolutely.
We're going to go, actually, Kristen, I'm going to go straight to you. The 8-minute section, which is essentially the Broadway medley ballet.
Broadway rhythm, it's got me. Everybody dance.
This is the pitch meeting where he basically tells them what the last act of this show is going to be for the premiere. What are your thoughts on this epic 8-minute section?
Yeah, eight minutes. Okay, so when you're watching this movie, this is such a fun sequence because it's like a movie within a movie within a movie. Like you're seeing so many layers here, like onion layers that you're unpeeling. No, it's a cool sequence. It's got literally everything in it. You got dancing, you got romance, you got development, you've got songs and solos and orchestras, and some of the dancing in here is, again, some of the most iconic dancing in any movie musical of all time. I can't remember the dancer's name, and
Sid Charisse.
Thank you.
Sid Charisse.
She is one of the all-time
Phenomenal.
best. She's one of the all-time best. That is one of the most gorgeous choreographed scenes. And they use that same backdrop that they use in the song You Were Meant for Me. That orange cloud background they use in that scene to show the romance, So there's a lot of things visually that this whole section does very well. As music, the individual pieces are great and they all do their purpose and they all have a lot of character behind them. The singing parts of them are all well done. There's nothing wrong with any of this song. The issue is it's an 8-minute medley. Right. That you need the visuals to connect to what's happening in your 8-minute medley. It's not like an 8-minute medley where all of it's just, a rehash of all the songs that you've had before. This is all new songs.
And it's contextual, yeah.
And it's super contextual to what's happening in the movie. So while this is a visual feast, as a coherent 8 minutes track, it loses focus because there's not one theme, there's not one song, there's not one narrative. And so as just a soundtrack listen, every individual piece is fantastic, but they don't kind of line up the way you would like them to in a coherent song. So that's really the issue with this one. It's hard to not watch this section of film because it's a gorgeous piece of film, but the soundtrack, just the song on its own, is a little bit hard to listen to.
Yeah, I would compare it to it would be essentially if Be Our Guest didn't reprise Be Our Guest at the end of the song. It doesn't have necessarily that through line. Yes, it's a bunch of sequences put together, and coherently, visually, it looks phenomenal and has a rhythm phenomenally. visually.
Yeah, this is one of the
Audibly-
times, that having a rehash musical kind of where you're choosing songs from other things, and the purpose of this movie isn't just to be a movie musical, it's supposed to be the telling of a story here.
Mhm.
And so it's one of those times where you miss out on a more traditional musical kind of wrap up, where the medley is like your greatest hits.
Yep.
And so you have that through line, you have that connection to the music. This is a storytelling device.
Right.
And you definitely, at the end of a soundtrack, 8 minutes, you're feeling a little like, about it. So I'll skip it because you're going to pass over me again, I'm sure.
Oh,
I'm just joking.
Rob, what are your thoughts on this?
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I feel that in the movie, this sequence is amazing. And Sid Charisse is perfection on in heels. I mean, she's amazing.
Easily.
And this scene is so important to the film, and it's got such energy. It's amazing to watch. But it, as a song, I mean, it to me, it really doesn't work on its own. I would give it I would skip it. Not that it just doesn't work as it's not a song. It's a medley, and it doesn't. You're hearing snippets of things. This absolutely needs the visuals to work. And I think there's no argument to be made about this. So yeah, I've got to agree. But in the movie, again, it's phenomenal.
It's a great sequence. It's
amazing.
This is just the problem with just judging a soundtrack, is that sequence completely gets shelved just because audibly there's just, the keyword is focus, and there is no focus in the penultimate 8-minute track that pretty much closes up your movie. It goes out on a little bit of a sad dud, and I'm gonna skip it as well. Kristen, what do you give it?
Yeah, I skipped it already.
All right, you skip it. All right, cool. Now we're gonna go right into the last track 10, You're My Lucky Star, which is essentially kind of thematically a finale reprise of Singing in the Rain.
Well, what happens at the end of the movie is Ripley is singing this song as she's getting into a spacesuit with the alien in the shuttle, the Narcissus.
Exactly.
She's escaped from the Nostromo, and the Nostromo is dead. All of her shipmates are dead, and she's using this song to comfort herself from losing her mind as she gets into a spacesuit in order to hopefully perhaps get the alien, blow him out of the airlock or whatever. So it's a really tense sequence. And every time I see this, you can't not be scared for her. Oh wait, hang on a second.
It all checks out.
It all, I actually, I think I'm wrong. Well, now that I think about it,
You are?
I think so. This is actually we're talking about. This is the scene when Dawn. If things have been revealed, and Kathy Selden has been revealed to be singing the Lena Lamont part, and everything looks like it's going to hell in a handbasket, and she might be run out of Hollywood, and her career might be over before it really begins. But in this chivalrous move that has to melt your heart, Gene Kelly comes out and says from the stage in this theater full of people, wait a minute, that's the real star of this movie. That's who you want. It's Kathy Selden. And Kathy thinks the curtain is coming down on her whole career, but no. Dawn comes to save her honor, save her career, save the movie, save everything. And it is such a great way to cap this movie because she is the lucky star. She's the lucky star for Dawn. She's the lucky star for Hollywood. She's everybody's lucky star. And it's so romantic. And it ends the film on such a high note. And again, I love the performance. You get that heartfelt, soulful singing that we heard in Singing in the Rain, but this is we get it again. We get to hear we talk about singing from the heart, man. And this song, and it brings them together in the perfect capper to this not just a great comedy, not just a great musical, but also a great romance. And it really solidifies this, and it ends on such a high note with not only is it a great song, but it just warms my heart every time I hear it.
Oh, it is it's a heartwarmer indeed, 110%. I just feel like musically, this is just how you had to end. Like there was
Oh.
no way to end it besides this, and you can even tell by just from the soundtrack itself that there's a lot of chemistry between those two.
Oh yeah,
phenomenal chemistry. Kristen, what are your thoughts on the finale?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's a lot of emotion to this song. I think that the vocal performances, are just, they carry exactly what the emotion is, like on the actor's face. Without seeing what was happening, you know what they're feeling. You know that Debbie Reynolds is just bawling in a very beautiful way. Like she has such great power in that she literally was like sobbing and still sounded amazing. But you need this emotional through line, right? And it ties in. You get a lot of that "You Were Meant for Me" tie-in because they use a lot of the same notes and a lot of the same progressions. So you get the tie-in with that song, which is their initial love song. And this is the encapsulation of that love, where the love has proved itself, the love has flourished, it's now blossomed, and it has come through all of this adversity to be this amazing thing at the end of the movie. And then I love that it kind of just finishes with this grand kind of choral thing, which is very like traditional Hollywood of that time, to have like the finish of like a bunch of choral people going like, oh, like that's very traditional, but it kind of fits with the end of the movie where they like pan out and it's their face is on a billboard, so like the tie-in with the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie, I think is really great and well done with this song. I think that this is another one of those where it's like maybe generic, and maybe they just have a hard time making their love songs not feel generic when you're not watching the movie. But at the same time, the performances of them, of the song in particular, really are elevated by the actors. They do a fantastic job throughout the whole movie, but in particularly, I think this song, you get so much of that emotion in the vocal performance that it's very, very highly elevated in terms of the content.
Yeah, I'm always under the assumption that if like a last song isn't either a download or a rockin', the musical itself failed. Because you have to end on a high note. You really do. Even though you might have some good songs, some catchy tunes, if you don't end and you don't give this audience that satisfaction, you essentially failed at your job. That just musically. So, Krista, what do you give it?
Yeah, I'd say download it. I think that just because of how emotional the song is, it's a fun listen. I mean, it's not every day that you get a song where you can feel the emotions that powerfully. So I'd say download it.
I'm doing a download as well. Rob, what do you give your
I dearly love this song, but I agree that it's not rockin'. I mean, it's the great culmination of this movie, and I love the performance. I love the vocal performances. I feel it, but I'm gonna download it. However,
go for
it. Because of its use in Alien. I think we can. Because I'm always thinking to myself, lucky. There have been many times when when I'm driving to a meeting and I don't want to be late, this song echoes in my brain, but it's because of Ripley, not because of their performance. But it always begins with their performance. It always starts with Debbie Reynolds and Gene Kelly, and then it turns into Ripley as I'm trying to find a parking space. So, this song does resonate with me, and I'm halfway between rockin' and download, but more download, I guess.
Okay. So high-end download. All right, that goes for what we went through the soundtrack. It was pretty much 10 tracks. This was super in and out, but there's the hardest part of the show. Arguably the hardest part of the show. We are going to give our top 3 songs and our 3 least favorite songs.
That's a tough one.
It's a toughie. Kristen, I'm gonna go to you first. What are your bottom 3?
I see who you like more in this trio here.
All
that we've been through, all that we've done. Garbage. No, I'm just joking. I think my bottom 3 is not super surprising. I think the only one that I really struggled with was "Fit as a Fiddle," because it's a great song. It means a lot to the film, but as a soundtrack listen, it's not one that I continually will like go to over and over again. The next one, definitely You Were Meant for Me. Again, means so much to the movie, but as a soundtrack listen, it's just kind of okay. And then, yeah, Broadway Melody, you can just like skip that when you listen to the soundtrack. Like, don't bother.
110%. Rob, this is going to be hard. I know it's going to be difficult. I'm going to go to you now.
For the bottom?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm gonna in backwards. Broadway ballet melody, absolutely. It's, and I have to say that I think I'm gonna go with Would You, because it's so part of the movie.
Yeah.
And then you were meant for me.
Yeah.
Those are my three. I mean, they're fine songs, but they're my bottom three that because I'd have to keep Fit as a Fiddle more, because I like that song so much.
Yeah, I vibe with the vocal in Would You more. So that's just a personal preference thing for me.
Yeah. For me, actually, my bottom is Meant for Me. I just feel like it is very generic. Then after that would be the Broadway medley. I do feel also that kind of it's just a medley of three songs. There's no coherent through line. And then Would You. So my bottom three is kind of Rob's bottom three, just in a different order. All right, so we're gonna go to the top three, which should be much more positive and uplifting. Kristen, I'm gonna go right back to you. What are your top three?
And yet I struggled more with the top three than I did with the bottom three, because this movie, when it hits song wise, does it so well.
Yeah.
I think it's only fair to say that the songs outside of the well-known two that were made for the movie are some of the ones that are the best in the movie. So Make 'Em Laugh and Moses Supposes are some of the best songs in the entire movie, and they were made for the movie. So I think that speaks a lot. My third choice is the hardest one, but I'm gonna go Good Morning, just because I like the trio and I like the energy they bring, and it's the song that I find myself singing the most out of all of them. So yeah, it's probably not your standard answer, but I like what I like.
Interesting. Rob, going to you.
In ascending order, for me, it's Good Morning, Make 'Em Laugh, and Singing in the Rain as number one. Again, maybe it's because I saw Clockwork Orange before I saw Singing, but I mean, Singing in the Rain in my own mind is one of those songs, and the performance, I've loved that song so much. I love the performance so much. But and Good Morning and Make 'Em Laugh are just so, to me, indelible. When somebody says Singing in the Rain, I think Good Morning, I think Make 'Em Laugh, and I think Singing in the Rain. So those are my three.
All right. I actually had a fun. We all have different top threes. In ascending order for me is Moses. I felt like that was a very catchy. I like Earworms. Phenomenal. Make 'Em Laugh is number two for me, because again, it's not just a world building kind of thing with him being like projecting his sort of sense of projecting to the back of the room. It's very over the top, and it just brings the energy to the film. And number one, I did the standard answer, would be Singing in the Rain, the title track. I mean, for me, it's the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious of this song, of this film, and also that the fact that the sequence itself is as iconic as King Kong on the Empire State Building. It really, really is a phenomenal, phenomenal piece. But okay, guys, this is also the final thing is the overall judgment on the soundtrack. And from what I am gathering, our final verdict for the soundtrack, even though it has three very rockin' songs, is overall a download it. From what we've all been given, the average is we've mostly given downloads, the score of a download to each individual track between the three of us. I'm going to go to you, Kristen. What are your final thoughts on the soundtrack? And do you think overall download it is the correct response?
I think it is a correct response.
All right.
No, I mean, I think the overall feel of the soundtrack to me is rocking, but at the same time, I have a very strong connection to this movie. So my take is definitely probably not going to be the take that works for the majority of people. So I think Download It is probably the correct place for this one as a soundtrack. As a movie, if you have not seen this movie, I implore you. It is one of the best movies ever made. It is one of the best musicals ever made. It is wholly encapsulating everything that is wonderful and awful about the movie making process. It is a beautiful story. It's a beautiful romance. It's got great music. It's got great dancing. Everything about it is slamming, as the kids say. And honestly, if you haven't seen it, just watch it. Just I know musicals are like not everyone's thing, but just watch it because you'll love it. And it made Debbie Reynolds a star. And because we got Debbie Reynolds, we got Carrie Fisher. So like, was, you know, I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying.
Sorry about that, Chris. I had to just
I just talked until.
No, it was great. She was great.
Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome. Okay, you just got your thought out because I'm going to.
You won't have to cut anything until literally you sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you
it's a great visual thing for you because you literally sit down, and that's kind of when I stop talking.
That's phenomenal. I apologize.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
All right, Rob. What are your final thoughts on the soundtrack and is Download It fair?
I think Download This is fair only because you know, when I think about a rockin' movie, it means like every song I can't get enough of. This is sporadic, but the highs are very, very high with this soundtrack. So I would say Download It. But one of the things about this movie, I have to echo the sentiments of my esteemed colleague here on the show when she said, this is one of the best films ever made. And it is certainly a movie that, even though I owned it, I didn't watch it thinking, ugh, do I have to watch this movie? I was so blown away the first time I saw this film, how delightful it actually is and how it works as a number of different genres. I mean, I love movies about movie making. I love romances and I love musicals. And this works as all of those. And it also works as a comedy. And I was just incredibly surprised at just how great this movie is for somebody that's like, I sort of dreaded watching it. I'm going to admit something to you guys.
Oh.
I had never seen The Sound of Music up until a few weeks ago. Now, I'd owned The Sound of Music. I had never seen The Sound of Music. It was one of these things that I have resisted my whole life. And normally I watch any movie, but for whatever reason, I resist musicals. I've resisted musicals, and my girlfriend Elizabeth, they bought it for me on Blu-ray 2 years ago, and I hadn't watched it. And I sat down finally and watched The Sound of Music, and I loved it. I love The Sound of Music. I loved it.
Thank you.
And it was kind of like this movie where I had resisted watching it, even though I owned it. You know, I own the Laserdisc, and I owned it because I thought, out of obligation, cinema history, I figured if somebody came to my house and saw that I didn't have Sound of Music in my collection, I would be somehow lesser of a film fan, and their esteem, whatever regards they held me in, would diminish. So I bought it as something I thought I was supposed to have, even though I hadn't seen it. And when I saw it for the first time, luckily I saw it in a theater, a beautiful print in a theater, and it was amazing. And this film needs to be seen like that, and I adore this movie. So I feel bad that I'm saying download only, but the music, sometimes the music, it's integral to you. You have to have the picture as well. You have to have both. Yeah. And I think that this movie, there are other movies that other musicals that I listened to the music first and fell in love with them before I'd seen the movie or the stage play. And this, I think you have to see the movie. The if you just listen to the album, it would not do the film justice or the music justice.
Yeah, those are two very poignant things. I for this musical, the movie is phenomenal. It has a lot of White Christmas kind of vibes to it. They have the same kind of beats. I totally dug White Christmas. I totally dig the fact that it feels like a stage show. I think Download It is a very fair assessment for the actual soundtrack itself. But just note, guys, that this is based on the soundtrack, not the film. The film is a phenomenal beast in among itself. And also, Rob, it's interesting that you say that about Sound of Music. Hopefully, if we ever have you back on again, we can go through Sound of Music. That would be phenomenal.
This same
Yeah.
channel. I am such a Julie Andrews fanatic.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
sweet.
Let's do Sound of Music next time. Anyway, Kristen, where can the good people find you online?
You can find me listening to only Julie Andrews. Let me get my camera in focus. Sorry, you can start editing after my finger touches my camera 5 times. You can find me Smith_K10, the number, not the word. Twitter, Instagram, and Stardust, even though I don't post anything on Stardust. You can also find me on Take 3, where we do videos and stuff. Sometimes I'm on them late night and rank them, and when I feel like talking about the Schmodown again, the Summit. Yeah, should be fun. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. And our special guest, Robert Meyer Burnett. Rob, where can the good people find you online, bud?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Burnett RM, or you can find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett or RM Burnett. And of course, you can find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my daily show, mostly daily show, Robservations, the show about something.
Show about something 110%. Guys, make sure to check out next week's episode of Suddenly Soundtracks, which is going to be Phantom of the Paradise, featuring Rachel Silvestrini, Mark Edward Hoyk, and Video Drew. That is going to be phenomenal. Also, be sure to check out our other episodes that are online right now. So from Rob and from Kristen and from myself, we say to you, keep rocking.